Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Christian schools and their leadership. This podcast is usually hosted by two Christian school leaders, but Mike is off this week, so you get just me, Rob. I'm the superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and today we have on Ryan Ermeling. We're going to be talking a lot about parent feedback, but before we get into kind of that topic, Ryan, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Rob. Great to be with you. And am a lifelong fan and product of Lutheran Ed. I'll lead with that since that's what we're talking about at large today. But I've been in Lutheran schools from preschool through college. Currently have the honor and distinction of serving as a chair of the Board of Regents at Concordia Irvine, which is my alma mater. Love that service. Had one daughter graduate from there last year, another who's a junior Lutheran elementary ed major there. Sixth grader at home to keep us young. My wife is she's a rock star in the family, but a 25-year Lutheran teacher as well. So it bleeds through our whole family. But I'm an entrepreneur by trade, and I've had the chance to grow and sell one business. And Parent Pulse is my latest venture, where we're really trying to empower Christian schools to better understand and engage with their stakeholders. And so having a lot of fun with that. We live in sunny, warm Arizona, Gilbert to be more specific, just outside of Phoenix. And so I think that's the basic rundown.
Well, it's a good rundown. And I hear Phoenix, it's probably nicer than here in Milwaukee. We're supposed to get anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of snow to maybe a ton of slush tomorrow. So you guys probably don't get that all too much out in Gilbert, I would venture.
Let's just put it this way. Next week is Thanksgiving week. I already have a golf outing lined up for Wednesday, and I might even be wearing shorts. So that should give you some perspective.
Yeah, probably hard to golf if there's any snow on the ground. So I'm gonna guess it's probably nice and warm, probably sunny. Well, there you go. So you have this rich tapestry of Lutheran connections, right? Grew up in it. Your wife teaches it. You have a daughter that's teaching it. You got a good connection at Concordia, like all this other stuff. And now you've taken some of that and all your history and experience with that, and you said, hey, we need to figure out how to make sure our schools are doing great with feedback and great with listening to parents and communicating. And I would imagine that a lot of Lutheran schools probably go, we're great at this. We're great at communicating. We are really great at understanding everything parents want. Now, in your experience, what things there, if a school says that, what would you say, that's great. You probably are really great at this, but have you thought of this, or have you maybe missed this slice? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things we find, we've created different feedback personas, as we talk to school leaders, and have really got to learn over the past 3 years or so what drives leaders. And I guess these personas are really true of leaders in any type of organization. But in schools, one of these 4 personas I call Sampling Samantha. And Sampling Samantha is that leader who tends to really think that they're informed and connected because they've heard anecdotal evidence or narratives from a handful of parents, right? And they either have these friendlies, I call them, or allies, people they've known for a long time, either as friend or just their kids have been in the school forever. And so they begin to really get well connected with those folks, or maybe some people that are squeaky wheels, right, that they hear a lot from. But I think there is a tendency for all of us, right, if we hear from a handful of families, a handful of parents, to think that that's representative of all of our families, of what's going on in the community. And so one of the things we always caution against is you've got to be careful with the narrative. You might be at pick up and drop off every day, right? But if you're not really systematically looking to collect a broader scope of feedback from a broader group of people, you're in danger of really assuming the micro feedback represents the macro feedback.
Yeah, I think I can definitely see that, even kind of in my own experience. You talk to 2 or 3 parents and you go, yeah, everyone must feel the same way, right? I felt like that was a very representative sample, and whether that's true or not, I guess I don't know. You always want to assume the best. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. What made you so curious about, feedback in the first place?
So again, coming from my background as an entrepreneur from a business perspective, one of the things that I think any healthy business owner leader will tell you is feedback is critical. And we're not talking about an annual survey. We're talking about day in, day out, week in, week out, proactively collecting feedback, collecting data from your customers. What do they like? What don't they like? What's working? What's not working? How can we better meet your needs? That's just part of the DNA of any healthy business. And when I took some time between the sale of my last business and thinking about Parent Pulse, I was actively thinking, what is a way that, this is a passion project for me. So I was thinking about what is a way I can bring value to Christian schools and more specifically Lutheran schools. That's my passion. One of the things it just struck me as I had more and more conversations with my own friends and colleagues, many of them who are administrators in Christian schools, that we don't always see that parent as customer, right? We see the parent as mission and ministry and extended family, and that's all great. I live that, right? My daughter is a sixth grader at a Lutheran school. My others have gone through that, so I'm part of that community. But at the end of the day, I think just about every Lutheran school is tuition based, right? And if they aren't, you're still giving parents a choice of whether or not they want to send their kid there, right? So by definition, our parents are customers. And if we don't start to look at them that way, if we don't start to really say, hey, if they're customers, we need feedback, we need to understand how well we're serving their needs, then we're only going to start to see issues with retention, with really understanding the community around us and how well we're serving them. So it really starts in my passion and background for trying to bring business principles into the world of Christian ed.
That's really interesting because thinking about it, if you interact, like any business you interact with on the day-to-day basis, like I think even, at the bottom of your McDonald's receipt, there's a little like, hey, survey thing, right? You get off the phone call with customer support somewhere, hey, stand in the line for a survey. You get emails, hey, take our survey. And I think education, we don't do that all that often. I wonder, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. I think some of it, I'm going to venture a guess, okay? You know more about this, so I'll venture my guess and you tell me how close I am or if I'm way off, okay? I think some of it, public schools, the kids got to go to school. They don't care too much. Like you have to be there. So we're going to ask you sometimes. We'll send out a survey at the end of the year, maybe, but you have to be here. There's not much we can do. We got a bunch of regulations and rules. Like we'll change what we can, but some of the stuff's not worth asking about. And then I think you're onto something there with the Association of our Lutheran schools. Like we view them more as mission and ministry and family and partner, and I think we take for granted the fact that we could still ask people for feedback on some of those things because we assume we are doing what's best for them. They must agree with us, otherwise they wouldn't send their kid. So why should I ask them if they agree with us? Because they'll tell us by leaving if they don't. How close am I?
I think you're spot on, and you're leading into. I mentioned these four personality types that we've kind of created. You're leading into to one of these other personas we developed, and we call this one Loner Lori. And all of these personas sound negative, and some of the ways we paint them are negative, and we're just trying to pull maybe some tendencies people have. But I think you're leaning into this one a little bit. Loner Lori is that person, I think, and this is valid and not a bad thing necessarily, but that person says, listen, I'm in a position, I've been called, right? We use that terminology in our Lutheran church body. I've been called. God put me here. He's going to empower me. He's going to give me the wisdom and discernment to lead this place well. This is his calling. And because of that, I've got everything I need. God's given me the instinct, the knowledge, the discernment, the wisdom to lead this place well. That's all fine and good. But the other side of that coin is God's put you in a community. And that community are people that you serve and interact with on a daily basis. And so if you're not leaning into that side of the coin, you're missing out on not only chance to even build and broaden your community, but also to truly understand how well you're serving them. So yes, Rob, I think that instinct is spot on. That's one of the things we see quite a bit is this, hey, this is ministry and mission. I'm equipped to lead. We get some feedback on the fringes. Great. We'll consider it. But there's often not that intentional desire to really understand how well we're serving.
That's interesting. I got to imagine almost all of our Lutheran schools have this nice family atmosphere. We aim for that in all of them, right? We want this strong community and we want good communication with people. And I think sometimes that might lead us to think if somebody didn't like something, they'll tell us. But I think maybe our assumption that they will tell us is maybe wrong? Have you kind of seen that we
Yeah,
feel like people just let us know, but maybe they don't?
no, I think you're right. We might have talked about this on the last podcast I was with you on as well.
Hmm.
So a lot of school leaders will talk about their open door policy, right? And to your point, hey, I'm here, I'm available. I'm in my office, I'm at drop off pickup, I'm at events, whatever it might be. If people want to, find me for something, they will. I call it the open door fallacy, because what happens is you get maybe 20% of your people who will take advantage of that. And usually it's 10%, again, that are your allies, your friendlies. I used that term earlier. And 10% that just have something they want to gripe about or complain about. And you probably see them, for being honest, more than you'd like, right? When they're coming toward you down that hallway, okay, here we go. You kind of, get yourself ready for
Hmm.
that conversation. That middle 80%, though, by and large, are not going to take advantage proactively of that opportunity, right? Either because they don't know you well, they don't feel like, they just want to complain, they don't want to be viewed as that person. Maybe they're fearful, right? It's might be just their perception, but they could be fearful of retribution of some kind, right? I don't want my kid to, you know, suffer in the classroom because of feedback I provide, right? So yeah, I think there is a good 80%, give or take, of people that aren't going to find you to share legitimate feedback.
Yeah, and that we don't want to miss those people because I think all that feedback is important. But you're advocating for something that I think probably sounds foreign to a lot of people, and that is constant feedback, basically. Not the one survey at the end of the year, but you know, there's always something out there asking a parent how they feel about something, right? And I know you guys do that through Parent Pulse, but let's set that aside for a minute. What is the benefit, just broad brushstrokes here, you think, to constant feedback over maybe the more traditional way of, hey, we do a survey at the end of the year?
Yeah, I would say, three, I can highlight three, I think, benefits of that approach. And there's more than three, but these are the three we've seen most often as we start to interact with schools. One is the idea of what we call iterative or ongoing strategic alignment. Okay. So if you're working on a 3, 5, 10-year strategic plan and you do a kind of a one-time survey, that's great. It gives you a starting spot. It helps you understand the lay of the land, right? But school leaders that I know are making decisions on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, right? Big and small. And if you don't have real-time data to inform some of those decisions, you're back to operating on narrative and instinct, right? And those can be two dangerous places to be if those are your only sources, your only points of reference for decision making. So having this ongoing, real-time, continuous feedback to bring data into those micro decisions that you're making every day and week can be really critical and helpful. Second thing is, every Lutheran school has this. I've seen it. If I'm being honest, I've been a part of it from time to time. We call it the parking lot mafia, right? So it's this group of parents, and it can be digital nowadays too, right? But parents that gather, and I'm not saying they're always, excuse me, they're always ill-intentioned, but sometimes the talk can turn into gossip or hearsay or rumor, and it can spiral out of control, right? And so a source of continuous feedback allows parents to sometimes vent any frustrations or concerns or ideas they have directly to a school leader, rather than look for the next parent that's standing by them at a football game or a birthday party, right? So giving them a healthier way to take things right to the school has really helped schools infiltrate and understand this mafia sensation. And the third is retention. Third is retention, right? So I think schools spend a healthy and productive and useful amount of time thinking about the family that's not in our school yet. That's important, right? But what about the families that are there? How much time are we really working to understand what's going on in their minds? And if you want to grow, right, growth starts with retention. We've got to keep that base solid, and then any new families, we're just adding to that base, right? But if we ignore the needs and the wants of our current base, there's going to be some hurt at the end of that that tunnel, right? So getting consistent feedback just puts us in constant touch and awareness of what's going on with those existing families.
Yeah, it sounds really good because I think as a school leader, as a principal, we want to know what's actually going on, good or bad, right? And no one likes getting good news, but if it's something that's, or sorry, no one likes getting bad news.
Bad
Everyone likes
news.
getting good news. There we go. Duh, Rob. But I think when we hear some of that bad news, some of it sounds so minor that it's easy for us to fix right away. And so we can just take care of it. Great, done, move on. And that, I got to imagine that experience. A parent brings something in, the school goes, oh, this is such a non issue. We're just going to fix it right now. That's probably got to feel great from a parent perspective. Do you see that?
100%. That low hanging fruit is so can be so valuable in multiple ways. So quick story. We not far from you, we work with a school, not a Lutheran school, but Sheboygan Christian. And they had a parent through the Parent Pulse platform they had a parent send in a comment on one of the surveys they got that said, "Hey, my 4-year-old is in extended care there and has lunch every day at the school. And whenever they bring lunch down from the lunchroom, there's never milk with the lunch. And I'd love my 4-year-old, he's a growing boy. I want him to drink milk every day." So our contact there walked down to the lunchroom and said, "Is there any reason we can't provide milk with the lunches every day to this classroom?" They said, "Oh yeah, we didn't know they wanted that. Sure, we can do that starting tomorrow." So he was able then to reach back out to that parent and say, "Hey, guess what? Starting tomorrow, your 4-year-old's gonna have milk every day with lunch," right? Which something so simple and easy, but that parent now is a raving fan. But the other thing is after this survey period, this 90-day period that Parent Pulse provides for schools, he actually shared with the entire community some general things they were learning and working on, but he shared this milk story. Now, this milk story only impacted one, maybe a few other families in that classroom, but the broader audience hears, okay, wow, they're serious about listening to feedback, and if they can find things where they can make the experience better, even for a small number of people, they're going to be proactive with that, right? So it sends a signal to your broader community that can be very powerful.
Yeah, and I know you touched on this earlier, that retention piece. I got to imagine for a school, once you get them in the door, that's like cost of acquisition. If we're talking business terms, right? Like that cost of retaining that person is so much lower than the cost of getting a new family in. So any way you look at it, whether it's parent relationships, whether it's dollars, whether it's your marketing efforts, if you can keep the parents you have happy, that's got to just be way better for the bottom line, for your enrollment, for your mission. I'd love to say that as Lutheran schools, we didn't need to think about the bottom line. And maybe you're one of the few schools out there that is still entirely church supported. Those are rarer and rarer. So I think a lot of us need to worry about, the electric bill now more than maybe we did in years past. And that's where I think we're seeing some of those business attitudes and those business ideas coming in because those businesses don't run on deficits. You got to make money somehow, and it's not ever about that for us. But without being able to keep our lights on, pay our bills, pay our teachers, we're not going to be able to do any of the other mission work we want to do.
Enrollment drives mission, right? So you're spot on. If you want to have a relevant, healthy mission, and the thing I love about our Lutheran schools, right, is the evangelical nature of them. We are missional schools, right? We exist not only to serve our own, but maybe even more so to serve those that don't have a relationship with Jesus. And if we want that mission to be relevant and continue, man, we've got to make sure that we're focusing on enrollment and that we've got that healthy bottom line. So it's so critical.
Hmm. I would love to say that I could just like pray for all the bills to be paid and then they would, but banks unfortunately don't take my prayers as payment. That's uh that's maybe a complaint
That's
that everyone else has too.
funny. Well, you might need to come up with a new business model there. Maybe
Yeah,
there's something
yeah.
there.
Yeah, there might be something there. So I got to imagine that there are some parents who feel better that they have something to say somewhere, even if it doesn't get resolved. Like, because parents will go on Facebook and they'll put all their complaints there, and they know Facebook's not going to solve them, but they feel better that they got them out. Have you seen something similar with the way you guys have been doing surveys?
Yeah, it's empathy, right? And yes, providing an outlet where the way we look at it is we'd rather have that outlet be directed it's almost a relief valve. We would rather have that relief valve pointed at you, at the school leader, rather than another parent, right? Because you hopefully should be equipped and ready to handle that, even if it's not great, if it is negative. You'd rather have that awareness. But now we're again stemming the tide of that parking lot mafia, that parent mafia, right? And again, I'm not trying to paint all parents as these bad people. I'm one of them. But then when that feedback does get funneled to you, part of it is just empathy, listening, hearing. And one of the neat things about Parent Pulse is you can even reply directly to comments, even from anonymous parents, right? And if a parent knows that, wow, okay, they actually read this and they sent me a short reply, that there's power in that empathy, right? You don't need to fix necessarily everything that's brought to you. And I want to make that clear. I'm not proposing that every piece of feedback is valid and should be attached to action, right? But you at least want to have that awareness, and you want to go back to that parent and show some empathy. We hear you, we can understand why this is important, and here's why we're going to look into this, or here's why we're not going to look into it. But just that back and forth communication can be really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's really beneficial because parents, they're not saying it something just to say something. They want something. They either want a reason to know why it's that way, they want something fixed about it. They want to make sure somebody knows about it because maybe it's not a problem yet, but it bothers them a little bit, right? Now that anonymous thing is interesting. I hate anonymous surveys. I hate them with the passion because someone will put something in there and then I want this fixed, and you're like, okay, well, that's a personal issue. I don't know who you are. I can't
Yep.
fix it for you. So it sounds like you guys recognize that people will be more honest in anonymous feedback, and you've developed a way to actually respond to those people, so it doesn't just like fall into a black hole like I guess a traditional anonymous survey does.
That's right. That's right. It's the best of both worlds, right? All the data and the research in the world shows that you're going to get more feedback and more valid feedback if you allow people to be anonymous, right? Some people just don't want to attach their name to it, right? And yes, I would say leaders at every organization, but maybe even more so at schools, to your point, hate anonymous feedback because it feels like they just have this veil they can hide behind and say whatever they want, right? But that awareness is so critical. And now to have in Parent Pulse a chance to take that anonymous feedback, good, bad, or ugly, and be able to actually reply and say, hey, this is really helpful, but I'd like to set the record straight on this, right? Now you're infiltrating that mafia, right? Or, hey, this is a big concern. I don't know who you are, but would you be willing to pull that veil down and come meet with us face to face so we can really dive into this, right? Having that chance just to engage even those people that want to be anonymous, that's been a game changer for a lot of schools that we work with, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be really helpful. Okay, so let's say people are listening, they think Parent Pulse is great. They totally want to sign up. Or maybe they go, you know what, we're gonna do things in-house, right? Let's
Mhm.
talk about that for a minute. If a school they want to kind of do more feedback, they want to find a nice balance there. They're gonna start doing more than just the one survey at the end of the year. They're gonna keep them anonymous so parents can give honest feedback. Should they break it out by, should they do surveys specific to each teacher? Should they just do a general one about school? Should they do one about their different programs? If somebody were trying to take this and say, okay, we're in on more feedback, we're not ready to buy anything yet. What
Mhm.
would be a good first step for them?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I think if you're looking at just surveys, right, we would suggest at minimum survey your people at least two, if not three times per year. And these don't have to be long, 50 question surveys. These should in fact be shorter surveys, 10, 15 questions maybe, right? But hit your people multiple times per year. Okay. And so you can understand how the year is changing. The problem with a one-time annual survey is it's a single snapshot in time, and you can't possibly understand a trajectory over the course of the year. You don't know how things are changing. You can't be agile and really pivot based on what you're hearing. So having these multiple touch points during the year gives you that power. Now with Parent Pulse, we actually drip these out over the course of a period. So people are constantly getting these surveys coming out, and it gives you even more real-time data. But if you're not going to go that route, at least consider doing two or three surveys. And I'm talking more broad cultural, high-level operational surveys, right? Not necessarily diving into the weeds on a specific issue, though you might from time to time need to do that as well. But I would also challenge schools to look at other ways of capturing feedback besides surveys. Is there one or two focus groups that could be helpful for you to really hone in on a specific issue, right? Or use something we call the Disneyland approach, right? If you've ever been in Disneyland, as you're leaving the park, this has happened to me a few times, you'll see a couple, they call them cast members, not employees, but they'll come up to you and they'll have an iPad and they'll say, do you have 60 seconds to answer two questions? And really the first question is how likely, it's a net promoter question. How likely would you be to refer Disneyland to recommend Disneyland to a friend or colleague based on your experience here today? The second question is, what could we have done to make the experience better for you? Right. So we often advocate to schools, you all have big events on campus every year. Maybe it's a fundraiser, maybe it's a theater event, maybe it's a basketball tournament. Get a couple staff members and just have them casually, and they can have a notepad or whatever, but just stop some people on the way out and say, hey, are you likely to recommend, based on your experience here, our school to others? Find some people you don't know, ask these questions. What can we do to make this better, right? So just a kind of a different way to approach it, but gives you some really on the spot feedback that can help guide some thinking about the experience you're providing. So there are some other unique ways you can approach it too, but those are a couple of thoughts I'd make off the cuff.
No, I really like that. And the having more than one survey a year makes a lot of sense because if you want to be the best school in the world, you survey everybody in October. And if you want to be
Yes.
like the worst school in the world, you survey everybody in like March or February.
Right.
It seems to be my experience.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to have a trajectory of that, and you can see, okay, was there something going on here? And that's interesting. Asking everybody after an event, or a few people, hey, how's this experience? Would you recommend it to anybody? And that I feel like as school leaders, we go, well, yeah, of course they would. Why do I even need to ask that? Everyone's going to recommend us. But I got to imagine that it's not, it can't be true for everybody. Like, no matter how good your school is, there's got to be somebody that's
It's not
something could be better.
Yeah, and I think the key with that is, again, find people, if you're doing that, find people that you don't recognize or know, because a big event, you're going to have people probably from outside your community, right? And they might not ever have a reason to be on your campus again, but they have fresh eyes to the experience you're providing, right? So just to get some quick initial thoughts, one school did this, and one of the feedback, the things they got was, well, it would have been nice to know where I was going. And what they realized is our signage on campus is horrible. And so they created a campaign to put some more wayfinding signs on campus and really make it clearer. And that helps not just that one event, but that now helps the experience when anybody steps foot on campus, right? So some of the feedback you get from outsiders can really just help you get, I call it being stuck inside the bottle, right? If you're inside a community for too long, you can't see the label on the outside anymore, right? So you're so insular. Getting somebody who has fresh eyes for that label and can read that label and then tell you what that label says, that can be eye-opening.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about because especially in our Lutheran schools, we have a lot of deep family connections, which is great. But then people have so much history that they read into it that maybe isn't evident to anybody outside.
Right.
Well, everyone knows what to do. Well, everybody?
Right.
Does everybody? Like when I became principal of a school, it was my first principal call, and they said, "Oh yeah, we our meetings are always in the meeting room," and I'm like, what room is the meeting room? Well, turns out the meeting room is a classroom. So it's not like the meeting room, right?
Right.
I didn't say meeting room on the door, but everyone knew except the outside guy.
Right.
And that is definitely true. And you bring new families into your school every year. So there's always an opportunity to say, hey, how is this experience as somebody new to our community? That's a great idea.
Yep. No, that Lutheran perspective is great. I mean, just a funny story too. I'm not sure if this would be applicable to schools, but my daughter came home from Concordia this last weekend for a quick weekend trip with one of her friends who doesn't come from a Lutheran background, but we gathered around before dinner and said the common Lutheran table prayer, right? Come, Lord Jesus, be our guest. And she's just sitting there stone-faced and not sure what to do. And it's like, oh yeah, you're not Lutheran, right? So we we have this perspective that everybody knows this, right? And so getting that outsider understanding and awareness can really help us say, you know what, we need to be more thoughtful or aware of X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, that's a great version of that story. That I think if we pay attention to that, there are things that are unique to us that we think are things everybody does and they're just not. And so it's nice to know, okay, what is actually something everybody does? What is just our version? And how do we be aware of the fact that not everybody knows what we know, or it has done it the way we've done it? That's really great.
Yeah.
So listening to all this, it sounds like getting good feedback from parents is like a full-time job for somebody who probably doesn't already have a full-time job as principal or full-time job as teacher or full-time job as administrative assistant or whatever it is. And I think that's where you guys come in, right? So you guys at Parent Pulse can do a lot of this to help lift the load for a lot of schools. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we've really, I think, built a tool that makes that takes the need for expertise and time off your plate. We don't expect our school leaders to be data scientists, and we know you're wearing 37 hats in any given day or hour, right? So trying to find time to craft a survey and send it out, and it's not going to happen. So we've created a tool that makes it very easy to build, distribute surveys. We put on autopilot. These surveys go out day by day automatically, and so you're just watching the feedback coming in, and it comes in snippets. You're not getting bombarded with hundreds of comments at once, right? It's a few a day, a few a week, and so it allows you just to have that constant awareness. But I think that was very top of mind for us as we developed this out, is we've got to make this easy and not add one more thing that people, oh, here we go, right? The other interesting thing, though, is, in fact, one of our partners, a Lutheran school out in the Phoenix area, North Valley Christian Academy, I'll mention his name, I don't think he'll mind, but Chris Schoenleb, who leads that school, told me recently, you know what, I said I can't provide quantitative data on this, but I think I've had roughly 20% fewer parent meetings this year. And the only thing we've changed is Parent Pulse. And I consistently do reply and engage these comments as they trickle in. It's like, I got to think I've just been able to put out maybe some minor fires or little things that otherwise could have blown up and created, a whole cascading effect of issues and meetings and conversations. And so I would argue too, that even a little bit of time that our platform does require is going to save a lot more time on the back end.
Yeah, as a leader listening to that sounds great. The fewer angry parent meetings I need to have, the better. That's great. If I can put out little 100%. Fires as they go, that sounds like something that I'd definitely be interested in doing. So what I'll do, I'll include your name and email in our show notes. So if anybody's listening, they can get a hold of you with maybe questions, and then I will put, I'm sure Parent Pulse has a website, so I'll put the link to that in the description there as well. So if people want to poke around and take a look at it. And then, Ryan, thank you for coming on today and talking about feedback and about Parent Pulse. I've learned a ton today, so I just want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your ministry and efforts there with Mike and all you do to just bring great topics and awareness to school leaders. Appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to do it. Can I pray for you before we go?
Please.
Okay. Dear Lord, thank you for Ryan. Thank you for the gift of feedback and communication. Thank you for our ability to listen, to speak, and to work together. Please be with him as he continues his work, bringing these insights to schools, Lutheran schools, Christian schools, all schools. Please bless him and give him the endurance to run the race you've put before him. Please be with all those listening in their schools and bring peace to their ministries and joy to their jobs. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Ryan.